factual and timely. Welcome back. This is Insight. Nancy Nalima here, and joining me now on set is Advocate Annette Komboka. Karibu sana.
Thank you, Nalima.
And of course, tonight we are looking at Chapter 9 of the Constitution, which is the executive. And we want to define the roles of the President and the Deputy President. And of course, following the fallout between the President and the Deputy President, which has been evident in a number of instances. And so tonight we'll be breaking down what the roles are specifically for the President and his Deputy, just to make you understand. Welcome to the program, and karibu sana Annette.
Thank you, Nalima.
And we want to talk about the relationship, even before anything else, the relationship between the President and his Deputy. I think this is like the first time in history where the conflict has been very pronounced.
Well, thank you for having me. First of all, it's always so good to be here, Nalima. I would like to refrain from making any sort of partisan comments on the relationship between our President and the Deputy President. All I can say is that there's a constitutional expectation that both of them have constitutionally given roles, and that up until we have another President and Deputy President sworn into office, they do have specific roles to play, and we expect that they should carry out those roles regardless of the dynamic between themselves.
Right. And of course, on the same, we first wanted to understand what Kenyans really think about the relationship between the President and the Deputy President, and whether they understand what the roles of the President are and what the roles of the Deputy President are. So in a few minutes, the Director, you will be taking us to the voice on the streets. But before we get into it, we know that for many people, they know that the President is the head of state.
Yes.
And so the President and the Deputy President under the 2010 Constitution, which is our current Constitution, then their roles are clearly defined. So if we just take a look at the roles of the President and following the back and forth, especially let's just start from there, is this in any way contrary to what is expected of the both offices under the Constitution?
So I'll briefly cover what the functions of the President and the Deputy President, and from that we can then see whether that sort of dynamic and relationship is affecting their roles. The President is, first of all, a symbol of national unity before anything. And then his principal role is to exercise the executive authority of the Republic for the interest of the citizens with the help of the Deputy President and with the cabinet secretaries that he will then appoint. So the President has a myriad of functions, the key or the principal ones of which is to exercise that executive authority, appoint cabinet secretaries, appoint permanent secretaries, appoint diplomats, administrative bodies specified under the Constitution to be able to exercise his mandate more effectively.
Okay, and I understand we do have the Vox Pops right now. So let's take a look at what the Kenyans are saying about the relationship between the President and his Deputy, and whether they know the roles defined for the President and the Deputy President.
No, kawaida, the Chief Commander is everything. Presidential decree, he can do anything. The way he just did, I can assign all Ruto's duties to Matiang'i. The same can happen to anybody. But constitution, you know, Ruto is protected by the way. But kwa kazi ya kufanya, he has to be assigned by his boss, who is the President.
So yeah. Ruto's responsibility are assigned to him by the President.
He has to be delegated. Today do this and that. Ama utakuwa every day when you wake up nafanya hivi na hivi na hivi. Yeah.
Hii maneno majibisano tunaona kwa media, eti mtu fulani anafanya kazi mwingine amefanya. Hiyo ninaweza sema ni maneno ya ajabu. Kwa sababu ukiangalia Ruto ni deputy president, ako kwa serikali, na anasimama anaongeleza mdosi yake na hasira. Hawezi muheshimu, hata watoto wadogo wanaona akikasirika mbele ya watu na anajibu mdosi yake vile anataka. Bwana, hii Kenya inataka heshima. Deputy President waja awe na heshima kwa mdosi wake. I think when I was in primary school, I started the president is the commander-in-chief. When somebody is commander-in-chief, is the head of everything. The role of the deputy president is to oversee and command if things are going well in the country. The role of the deputy president is to assist, to come and assist where things are not going good, so that he can help the president.
First of all, it's a bad character, you see. Why am I saying this one? You know, they are the leaders, you see. And we young people, right now we are hustling, or we are training to be good leaders for tomorrow, you see. And now if we, personally, tunaona kama wana fight to each other, unaona, haionyeshi ile uongozi nzuri. Ndio maana naweza wa encourage hivi, if they are leaders and they know their roles very well, you see. You know, Uhuru Kenyatta is the president, and as the president, he head the state, you see. So let him play the role of heading the state, and also the deputy president, being that he's the deputy. What's the role of the deputy? A deputy is someone who, let's say, they go together with the president, you see. So him also, he played his role very well. So what I can say is that from their fight, wasionyeshe wananchi, unaona, hiyo fight yao waone vile wanaweza tatiza, alafu wakuwe na amani.
So and then what do you think sasa the roles are? What is the role of the president? And what is the role of that?
Okay, the role of the president is to govern the country, yeah, and to control all activities in the nation, you see. And the role of the deputy president is actually to help the president in deciding on what areas they can put more effort, or on what areas they can rectify on.
Right, and those are the opinions of different Kenyans on the street on their understanding of the Constitution, of course, the roles of the President and the Deputy President. And Annette, as you have heard, Kenyans, they seem to have a bearing. They know the President is the head of state and the Deputy should be in an assisting capacity to, of course, the office of the President as well. And of course, on the conflict, on the issues that have been publicly seen between the President and the Deputy President, then their view is it's dirty linen in public. So before we took those workshops, you were just explaining how the character, the manner in which they're carrying themselves, is it contrary to what is expected of them in the Constitution?
Well, first of all, I'd just like to say that the citizens that we've just watched actually have a very good grasp of the constitutional roles of the president and the deputy president, actually are set out under the Constitution. And what the citizens have done is express something that I, as a professional, as a lawyer, will hold myself back from saying, in the sense that them, as the electorate, will then say that we are not pleased with the sort of behavior going back and forth between the president and the deputy president, and that they're meant to put up a united front. So Nelima, what I can say is that when you look at section 150 actually, article 150 of the Constitution, it provides for the functions of the deputy president. And article 151 says that the deputy president is the principal assistant. Is a principal assistant of the president. And under article 151(2), it then proceeds to say that the deputy president will carry out all the functions as assigned by the president and any other constitutional role imposed or given to the president. So from that, we can infer that the deputy president works, assists, and carries out their mandate under the direction of the president, and as long as whatever mandate they're exercising is in line with the Constitution, then it is all right, it is valid. And when you look at the role of the president, like I reiterated, exercising the executive authority of the republic with the assistance of the deputy president and cabinet secretaries. I think we have seen, I am also a member of the electorate, aside from being a lawyer and sitting here as a professional. I have observed that there is a dynamic in that relationship that changed over time, and we are seeing them sparring somewhat in public. In the absence of a united front, it's not my call, or rather I cannot for sure state what that effect has been on their constitutional roles. All I can speak to definitively is that they do have a role to play, and for them to carry it out effectively, there has to be some sort of agreement, some sort of being on the same page, rather, to be able to carry out those functions properly.
So, and critics have argued that the president and the deputy president being in the back and forth about the failures, quote unquote, on the Jubilee government, then says doesn't inspire any confidence to the Kenyan citizens, and of course goes against the constitution and against the president's rules, where he is supposed to be a sign of unity for the nation, the office of the president.
Well, yes, as you have rightfully pointed out, under Chapter 9 of the Constitution, the first responsibility, or the first description that we get about or in relation to the president under that chapter of the Constitution, as you've rightfully pointed out, is that the president is a symbol of national unity. And then again, you then go back to all the functions that the president has to carry out with the assistance of the deputy president. That lack of unity between the two parties can make an inference as to the expectation of national unity that the president is then meant to symbolize. But we also have to remember that the Jubilee government, with its agenda and with the promises that they made the people, that was a political strategy separate from constitutional rules. So I can then not speak to the political agenda and whether they then met the expectations of the electorate, because then there have to be certain parameters. There has to be research again done to see whether this was achieved. But when we take back and we speak constitutionally, aside from any political agenda and strategy, we know that there has to be the exercise of certain powers by the president with the assistance of the deputy president, who's his principal assistant, and that the rights of citizens under the constitution, constitutional rights and rights under statute and rights under acts have to be exercised, have to be seen to be exercised regardless of any political alignment of either party.
Right, and you mentioned that the deputy president cannot then take up any mandate other than that which has been assigned by the president. Is that so?
So when you look at Article 150 of the Constitution, there are three principal roles set out for the deputy president when it comes to the functions of the deputy president. Number one is to deputize the president and act as his principal assistant. Number two, to carry out any other duties that have been assigned to him or her by the president. And number three, to carry out any other function set out under the Constitution. From the reading of all those three, we can see the first two limit, or rather create a scope of functions for the deputy president that are then within the ambit or under the direction of the president. And when we go a little further in the Constitution, when it comes to then how our deputy president takes office, it says that at a point a president or a person is offering themselves up to run for presidency, they should have a running mate, and then that running mate then assumes the role of the deputy president. So the assumption is that there has been an agreement of sorts that we're going to run together, and that when I become president, you will deputize me and be my principal assistant. So yes, I will say that the functions of the deputy president are largely limited to deputizing the president and being his principal assistant.
Okay, and just looking at the previous regimes before the 2010 constitution, we know that Kenya had a very long list of vice presidents.
Yes.
And it was under the discretion of the president.
Yes.
He would fire and hire, but now things are different. So what are the circumstances right now for the deputy president then to be ousted?
So I do recall with amusement 20 years ago, I mean, we were both very young,
Right.
I would imagine then. But I do remember a succession of vice presidents being appointed. And I'm also informed by my parents and people older than us that state officers used to have televisions in their office so they could watch the lunchtime news, because you don't know when the president would announce that you don't have your job.
Right.
Anymore. It could be in a harambe, it could be on the roadside where he's addressing the people, and then he remembers, oh, and Nelima effectively fired as well. So under the constitution now, the 2010 constitution, it effectively dealt with that malady of appointing and dismissing a deputy president at will by the president. Under Article 151 of the constitution, there are certain grounds that have been set out for the removal of a deputy president. And the first ones are where the deputy president is found to be physically or mentally incapacitated.
Right.
And there's a whole procedure that involves doctors, that involves a tribunal to then ascertain whether the deputy president is physically and mentally fit to carry out his functions. Then the second ground for removal is on impeachment. And to be impeached or to be considered for impeachment, the deputy president must found to have grossly violated any of the provisions of the constitution, be found culpable of taking part in an activity that can be deemed to be gross misconduct, or number 3, has violated any provision of local and international law. So those are the grounds. And it's not at the discretion of the president to then appoint or to dismiss a deputy president. When we look at Article 144 and Article 145 of the Constitution, there are certain grounds and there's a procedure for removing the president that then applies to the deputy president, subject to slight modifications.
Right.
So that procedure will be followed, which most of the time, if it's physical and mental incapacity, getting professionals to determine that. Then a decision is made by a tribunal. Then if it's on, and then it's taken by parliament. Then if it's on the basis of impeachment, the motion to impeach the president on grounds of violation of constitutional provisions or gross misconduct will be initiated in the National Assembly, and then a vote will be taken by the senators in the Senate to then impeach the, the president or deputy president.
The difference between Kenya before the promulgation of the 2010 constitution.
So the president under the 2010 constitution does not have any power to dismiss the deputy president or remove the deputy president.
Okay, and on one of the interesting things that have been making headlines is President Uhuru Kenyatta has repeatedly breached protocol, say like on Madaraka Day, when he did not invite his deputy. And the deputy president in many cases is the de facto master of ceremony when it is on those national events. So when it comes to such events and the president breaks protocol and does not, for lack of a better word, disregard the deputy president, so is that unconstitutional?
Well, the constitution does not address itself specifically to ceremonial protocol on then what happens in national events or national holidays. So such snubs would come to personal dynamics and wanting to prove a political point. The constitution itself guides us when it comes to the principal roles, the procedure of appointment, the procedure of ascent to office, and the procedure for removal. So such snubs perhaps would be with an attempt to drive a message home, but the constitution itself does not bother seek to address issues to do with who speaks first, who should be invited. I highly doubt that there's even a statute that provides for that. I think masters of ceremonies having a program during a national holiday, it's really just a matter of administration.
So they've been, ideally, the deputy president has been like a master of ceremony, but it is not constitutional. So it is at the discretion of the president.
No, under the functions of the deputy president, there's nowhere that it says he's an MC.
Rightly put.
Yes.
So if the president skips him saying an event, it's at his discretion.
Well, it's at his discretion, I would imagine, and that event has a program. It has the people who talk at what time.
Right.
But it's petty. We have serious constitutional issues to discuss, and not a program and who's nabbing who. That's the dynamic between them that involves them, not us.
Okay, I do understand we are short of time.
Yes.
But the Interior Cabinet Secretary, Fred Matiang'i, was given additional responsibilities, and many people, especially from the UDA party, where Deputy President William Ruto is a flag bearer, said that power is being stripped off the Deputy President and given to the Cabinet Secretary for Interior, who is Fred Matiang'i. So is the President allowed within the Constitution to give more responsibilities to the CS and take some responsibilities away from the Deputy President?
So yes, to an extent, the Constitution provides that the President can, through a gazettement in the National Gazette, accord certain responsibilities to a Cabinet Secretary to implement, for example, a certain act or statute, and give this Cabinet Secretary various powers. And this is what we saw with the President then giving CS Fred Matiang'i certain responsibilities.
Right.
Whether they were removed from the Deputy President, well, now that's the jury is out on that, because remember, the Deputy President will deputize the President on all this number of roles.
Right.
But if there is a responsibility to implement an act that the President then feels a Cabinet Secretary is best placed to implement, he's empowered by the Constitution to do so.
Right. And lastly, moving forward between now just about a month
Yes.
to the August 9th general elections,
Yes.
and the relationship between the Deputy President and the President, what do we expect of it, and what, in your opinion, is the way they should be carrying themselves even in this last stretch?
It's simple. Until another president is sworn into office and takes the oath of office, our president still remains the president, the current deputy president still remains the deputy president. And they then have to they're tasked with the responsibility of carrying out their constitutional roles as president and deputy president. So when it comes to the expectation of how they should carry themselves out, the expectation doesn't come from us, it comes from the Constitution.
Right.
And they're bound to carry themselves in such a manner and carry out their roles.
And the Constitution does not define how they should behave in public, like not have an exchange?
The Constitution doesn't address itself to the personal dynamics
Right.
between the president and the deputy president.
It is the office.
The Constitution addresses itself to the office. When it comes to the personal dynamics between the president and the deputy president, I mean, that is really up to them. But what we expect of them is that they should exercise the executive functions for the benefit of the citizens.
Okay, thank you so much, Annette Kwamboka.
Thank you.
Your valid opinions and the professional touch, very valid to this conversation. That has been our discussion tonight. Of course, we have been taking a look at the Constitution and Chapter 9, which is the executive, and we have been defining the roles and responsibilities of the President and the Deputy President following the public exchange of a blame game. And of course, we have defined what the President's role should be constitutionally and the DP constitutionally. And of course, we appreciate your feedback, and let's keep the conversation going across all social media platforms at Lookup TV on Twitter, Lookup TV on Facebook, and Lookup TV on our YouTube channel. I am Nancy Nalima, and our sign language interpreter for tonight has been Josephine Oko. Good night.
Factual and timely.